at 12 o'clock. A stalemate from the start. He threatened me with words, you see. I threatened him with art. The atom bomb was not enough. Quantum physics had just given up. So peace was made by 1 o'clock, and we made fantastic lunch.
Hello, and welcome to Kitchen Sink. Today we are joined by a very special guest. We're joined by singer-songwriter and multi-instrumentalist Rosalie Cunningham. Rosie, can you believe that it's been 6 months since we were sitting together in a hotel lobby in Edinburgh?
I cannot. It seems like I was just saying, it's very, very hard to gauge time at the moment, isn't it? Because there aren't really many markers by which to sort of checkpoints, because nothing much happens or hasn't been happening for the past couple of years. So that was probably the last exciting thing that happened to us, really, going on tour, which we're about to do again. I don't know if it feels like 6 months or what it feels like, really.
6 months, 6 weeks, 6 hours, 6 years. Who knows? So what have you been up to?
Preparing for the next tour. I guess we've been rehearsing. We have a new drummer. And so doing a lot of that, doing a lot of writing. And promoting this album, really, because this album, I feel like I've been dragging this whole project on for years now, but it actually only technically came out a couple of weeks ago, about 3 weeks ago.
I'm staring at my copy right now on very handsome vinyl.
Oh, it's good looking, isn't it? I was really pleased with the way it turned out. But yeah, so I'm still sort of flogging that whole thing at the moment, which is I mean, I shouldn't say it like that, but it feels, I mean, it was such a long-winded process recording it, which I'm sure we'll get into in a bit, but it just feels like such old news to me now. I'm just really interested in the next one.
Always the way it goes. I'm in the process myself of sending 2 projects out to literary agents and publishers, and you're trying to be enthusiastic about it because no one else has seen it, but you yourself have lived it for years.
Exactly. Yeah.
And you just want to get on to the next thing, like you said. Anyway, speaking of new albums, Two-Piece Puzzle. It's enormous. Yeah. I'm still trying to digest it. It's sprawling and epic and intimate and small at the same time.
Yeah, it's very intimate sounding to me, I suppose, because of the circumstances under which it was created. To me, it does sound very intimate. But I mean, I'm really, really blown away with all the reviews, because living it for the past couple of years, I really had no idea what people were going to think of it at all. Are you still there?
I'm still here.
Okay, sorry, it just went completely silent. I thought I was talking to myself for a minute. So I mean, perhaps it is sprawling. I don't know. It's very difficult. I'm so close to it. It's so difficult for me to actually have an objective view.
We're in this position as writers where we have to then, once you finish the behemoth of the novel and all the revisions, you then have to go out there and sell it to literary agents, who in turn have to go and sell it to publishers.
You do, and you have to analyze it in a completely different way.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
It's near impossible for me, so I feel your pain when you tell me this with regards to the new album.
Yeah, although we are here to talk about it, so.
we are. So let's do that. I'm still digesting it. I love the whole A-side so far. For me, is just an amazing journey, from the instrumental beginning to the mushroom-infused ending.
Yeah, the A-side is my favourite too. I don't know if it's your favourite, but it's.
It is my favourite so far, but I think it's also because it's such a journey in itself. Even though I've listened to it 3 or 4 times through now on vinyl, I'm still getting to grips with the second side, and I feel like I just need to give it some more time because there's so much to digest on there in a good way.
Probably do. Yeah, lots of people have said that as well. It's certainly a grower, but I think that's the case with everything I've done. Really, it's not. Well, I mean, perhaps there's tracks like 149 which seem to be quite instant with people, but yeah, a lot of people it takes a few listens.
There is a maturity to it, which I love, and an authenticity to this album, which was just a joy to listen to. And I know we've touched on this when we've spoken privately. When we met last time, you told me that while we were sitting there sipping a very fine scotch courtesy of Patty Russo, who we thank enormously for that, you told me that you had just finished mastering the album and you were really happy with it. And then I remember that you went off, did the rest of the tour dates, and we caught up again. And you told me that you were right back in the studio.
Trying to remix, actually, which was a fruitless exercise. I didn't actually use the remix that I did in the end. The reason being is because, well, I just tinker to bring point of insanity, literally. And it's really good having Ross. So for anyone that doesn't know, my partner Ross, we work together. He's in the band, and he's very he can work quite incessantly on things as well sometimes. But I mean, I do it to the point of like, yeah, I'm pretty neurotic about it. And so it was good to have him around, because I could have just been remixing for years. And he kind of tells me when enough is enough. So yeah, after the tour, I was remixing it again because we'd picked up a new desk on tour, which we'd taken home, and a new tape machine as well. So I wanted to have it, give it another go with the new equipment that we bought, which was pointless. Never saw the light of day. So
you can actually really hear more of the analog nature of the new material and the way it was recorded coming out, as opposed to some of your previous works.
Well, I've always used a bit of a hybrid, really, because of the way that I work, which is mostly solitary. I mean, the way that I track things up is mostly by myself. It doesn't really make sense to do it entirely analog, because it's just sort of a logistical nightmare. So I kind of I do a lot of the recording into Logic and then mix everything analog, which is a great way to do it anyway, because I think having the visual sort of cues of a screen when you're mixing really distracts from what you're actually hearing. Yeah, I think it's a much more organic way to just listen with your ears rather than your eyes.
So tell us about the mastering or lack thereof on this album.
Well,
most people who bought the album on vinyl will be aware of the little slip that you slipped inside the sleeve, stating that you decided not to master the album in the end.
Strictly just for the vinyl, actually. So for the CD and the digital that you'll hear on Spotify or wherever, that is mastered. I wasn't happy with it, and to be honest, I never have been happy with mastering ever. It's this sort of like dark art. No one quite knows what it's for. And obviously when once upon a time it was absolutely necessary, because you couldn't actually my record on vinyl is very quiet compared to other commercially released releases, and that's why I had to put the note in, because as long as you turn it up, I think it sounds great. It's just it'd be slightly unfair if I hadn't mentioned it and people just thought, oh, this is unimpressive because it's quiet, sort of thing. But that's the whole loudness wars bollocks. Yeah, I mean, it's not extreme. I just thought if it was played back to back with, records that people know and love, that might have sort of some influence on there.
It was a good call to put the note in the sleeve, I think. Thinking of the album and the mastering, to my ears, it immediately sounds thinner in a way, but in a good way, in a true early 70s first pressing kind of way.
Yeah.
And you're sitting there and you listen and you start to realize that perceived thinness is simply down to a lack of compression.
Yes, and you can actually hear the parts, you can hear the instruments far more clearly, I find.
Yeah, and there's more fidelity to the instruments.
Definitely. And there's more of a kind of 3D aspect to it as well, I find. Like there's more actual space in it.
Okay, I think at this point we should probably talk about a quick recap for people who maybe aren't so familiar with your work to date, where you came from, what you did, and where you found yourself now.
Where do we begin?
Shall we start with ipso facto?
Yes, well, that was an all-girl band, my first sort of successful professional band, let's call it that. I had bands at school, very amateur, but was doing it from a very young age, playing live at sort of underage venues and things like that from around 13, 14. And then started ipso facto at, I think 16 or 17, but yeah, we didn't start gigging until I was 17 anyway. But then that took off very, very quickly, and I certainly wasn't prepared for it, in terms of like, you know, mentally prepared for it, socially prepared for it, certainly not musically prepared for it. And I mean, it was a wonderful experience. It was a bit of a kind of roller coaster ride, kind of thrust into semi-success at that age. It was very short-lived. The band were only together for about maximum 2 years, I think. And then after that, I thought, because everything had almost been handed to me on a plate, I thought that's how easy it was to find success. And yeah, the second time round certainly wasn't that easy. I wanted to be taken more seriously. Obviously, as a kind of petulant teenager, I was a bit upset that people were asking me more about what makeup and clothes I was wearing than my music. Yeah, with Purson, the idea for that was that I wanted to do something musically more ambitious, more serious, I suppose, heavier sonically, and with better musicians. So that was that, but it took me quite a long time to get all that together.
It was the release of Electric Landlady. When that single came out, I think it just kind of, I think your career blossomed at that point. It's certainly how we found you, and obviously very striking video.
It was a great time. I really look back at it fondly, and I do sometimes wonder if I made the right decision dissolving the band. Well, I'm sure we'll get onto that in a minute anyway. I had to, for various reasons, and it was nothing. It wasn't personal differences with anybody in the band. It wasn't anything like that. It was purely business reasons, which is very sad, actually.
The folly of being an artist and then realizing that you're not allowed to concentrate solely on the art.
Well, it wasn't just that, really. I just naively just gave away too many pieces of the pie. There were so many people involved that didn't necessarily have our best interests at heart, and there was no way out of it either. There was no way out of the contracts that we were in. After a couple of American tours, we did some amazing things, but things kind of just reached a head at the end of 2016, and it wasn't going to be possible to continue with that band. And I had been thinking about doing things under my own name anyway, because as far as the recording and writing was concerned, it was very often a solo pursuit anyway. So I had been thinking, when am I going to just call this my name? And that was just the right time.
You're alive, but have you ever been for a ride on my bike? When you're hurrying and worrying, oh love for breath, won't give it a rest. It takes the question mark right out of your head, onto the page, onto the stage, into the conscious stream. I know we're meant to be
constraints anyway creatively. I never did. Nobody ever got in my way. I think if it sounds like I'm more free, it's perhaps just because I'm a bit more experienced with with writing and recording. But no, I was never. It was nothing but a joyful experience creatively, that band. Yeah, it was just other things getting in the way.
It certainly comes across in the music. Maybe it was more of an evolution that
I think
we're hearing.
Yeah, well, I don't know. You say maturity. I suppose that's what it is. I'm in my 30s now.
Oh God, don't talk to me about age. I'm aware of what's coming up this year on June the 2nd.
Oh, really?
Yeah, that's my birthday. I was born in 1980, so do the math.
Oh, right.
Yeah. But we don't talk about that.
Now that I'm past the 30 hurdle, I just see it all as the same.
Yeah, maybe that's a sad reflection of the times that we live in.
A sad reflection, but also a good thing, because I don't think, your career is over once you're 30 now as a rock star or whatever. It's totally not like that. I mean, I have so much respect for loads of artists that are in their 40s, 50s and older doing it. And it's as long as you are fit and healthy, why do you have to stop?
It seems ridiculous, doesn't it, when you look at a picture of the past and you see this insubstantial number. What were we talking about? You just left Purson and you had your first solo record out, and then you released, was it last year? It was last year. You released a 7-inch 45 with 2 tracks, Number 149 and Fossil Song. What can you tell us about those 2 tracks?
I love the idea of like just a one-off sort of 7-inch. I'm going to do it again actually before the next album, with a double A side, actually, one of my songs and one of Ross's songs.
Oh, fantastic.
Yeah, because I just really like it as a little object that's nothing to do with an album. Those 2 songs, I suppose they're not sort of directly linked with each other. They're just 2 songs that I had floating around that didn't fit on the album for whatever reason. Because even at that time I was working on the album. So I mean, actually started, when did I start working on the album? 2020, yeah. So that's how long it's been. And those 2 were just kind of like a stopgap in the meantime thing, because for various logistical and plague reasons, I knew that the album was going to be put back quite a long time. And I didn't want to just not have released anything in 3 years. That's crazy. So yeah, that was that idea. The song itself, 149, is, have I told you what it's about? I think you probably gathered.
You can feel free to explain it to anyone who's listening, but I think we did speak about it briefly.
Yeah, it's so I dream constantly. I mean, I did last night as well. It's almost every night. Dream about my childhood home, but in a distorted fashion. So it will be like there'll be rooms from that house in other buildings and things like that. So it's obviously so deeply ingrained in my consciousness that yeah, that's what that song's about. I just have really fond memories of it, I suppose.
Touching on this, paint a picture and tell us a little bit about what it was like.
I'm very happy. I was the eldest of 4 children, but 4 children within 4 years, so we were all very close. A very creative household. My dad's a musician. My mum is a yoga teacher, very spiritual woman. I guess it was slightly bohemian household. And yeah, music was very, very important. Lots of music. And we were kind of encouraged to do anything artistic or creative, not ever pushed into it by any means, but just sort of, it was understood that was, a viable career path if we wanted to go down that road. So I guess that was a big influence. Yeah, it was a very sociable house, always had friends around, things like that. So yeah, it was a great place to be, a great place to grow up.
Sounds like the perfect childhood.
Each night I realize
for me, once you released that single, that double single, they're they're actually probably my favorite two songs of your entire output.
Wow.
They complement each other so well. And for me, especially Fossil Song.
I do love Fossil Song. We're playing that live now.
Second solo on Fossil Song. I should probably bring this up here. Not a lot of people probably are aware that you play the majority of instruments on your records as well.
Yeah, quite a lot of them. Yeah. So, sort of primarily a guitarist. My favourite instrument to play though is bass. I absolutely love playing bass. In fact, I was playing bass last night at the gig that we did last night, and it's the happiest I can be. Yeah, playing bass, not having to front a band, just sitting in the pocket is my favourite place to be. Yeah, and keyboards, I'm really not very good, but I know what I want. I can kind of hear something and make it happen. So, but I'm not very proficient.
Well, I don't think you get enough praise for your lead guitar playing, which is astounding because I think it's down to awareness. I just think the majority of people probably see you as the singer and don't see you also as doing a lot of lead work. For me, your playing is heavily reliant on really great phrasing and melody.
Oh, thank you. Yeah, I do love that solo. So in rehearsals, I've been playing it absolutely note for note because I don't think there's any room for any improvisation in that because, like you say, it's the phrases are so memorable. It's like basically a series of hooks, isn't it? So you can't really mess about with it, but it's great fun to play. And that is kind of how I write solos anyway. I sing them or I hear them. I visualize them musically in my head, and then I have to work it out. I have to translate it. So it's not just sort of like, flowing out of me. It's like there's always this interface of I have to be the translator of the melodies that I'm hearing and then onto the fretboard. That might be why they're sort of catchy.
Indeed, there's I think it's a technique that maybe surprisingly, I don't know, or maybe not, a lot of guitar instrumentalists use a similar technique of actually humming or singing a melody and then transposing that to the fretboard. Paul Gilbert is actually one of the instrumentalists who does that. If you remember Paul Gilbert from Mr. Big.
Oh, okay. Yeah.
Let's bring this back to your music again. We went on from 149 and Fossil Song, and suddenly we're up to date with Two Piece Puzzle, which is out now and available to buy via your own website.
It's also selling out very quickly. So,
right. So if you want it, grab it now.
Definitely. Yeah, grab it now.
We will put links below for all of this and merchandise and tour dates and tickets, because I know the tour is about to start in maybe a week or two.
God, yes, it is.
10 days, maybe?
It's actually 8 days. It's, yeah, basically.
Oh, wow.
That's quite worrying.
That's fast. I didn't mean to unnerve you.
No, it's okay. I can't wait. It's going to be it's quite an intense one. It's quite a long one, and we don't have very many days off. I think we only have 2 days off. I have to kind of rein it in, I think, with the drinking.
Yeah, maybe the whole bottle of scotch thing isn't such a good idea this time around.
Very well behaved, comparatively, anyway.
Speaking of touring, I remember you mentioning last time we met that you had been part of the Kiss cruise experience, where bands are selected to come and support Kiss on a cruise ship, and then you're kind of stuck with Kiss for the duration of the cruise.
Very bizarre. Well, stuck with Kiss fans actually is the is more to the point, because we did meet Kiss a few times, but they're up in their suites and everything. You don't really see them much.
Right.
But the fans are mental. They're like their whole identity is Kiss, and there are Kiss families, and I guess it's like supporting a football team or something.
Sure.
So they're sort of head to toe merchandised up, and even like the babies are wearing Kiss baby grows, and it's crazy.
I grew up in the 80s, so I know Kiss quite well. From a fan's point of view, obviously, I don't really know Kiss at all. Patty does, however. She played with Paul Stanley. I can't remember the concert now, but I know it's on her website. She did some kind of event where they sang together. And also, when I was working on Bad Out of Hell, the musical, I remember Jim Steinman telling me that he had stumbled upon Kiss in the early 70s before they were called Kiss. They were called Wicked Lester, I think, at the time. And this was kind of just on the cusp of the makeup era.
Yeah.
And Jim cited himself as being the makeup's biggest fan. And he said to me they didn't know it at the time, but he loved the makeup, and he was one of the main proponents for them using the makeup going forward, because they were always so nervous in the early days, and they would ask him questions like, is it too much? Do we look like superheroes? Is it goofy? And he was like, no, it's amazing. You need to keep wearing the makeup. And they did, and I guess the rest is history.
They done, yeah.
So what was it like? What was it like touring with Kiss?
Well, it was a great opportunity for us because we got to, be exposed to all these people that wouldn't necessarily ever be interested in the kind of thing that we were doing. But they're really open-minded fans, actually. They like all sorts of things, because I guess Kiss are actually quite difficult to classify, because you have metal fans that like them, you have pop fans that like them, and so that was great for us because we got to, show our sort of our side of music to these. These very varied fan base, I suppose. And being on the cruise itself was just mental, really. It was, we didn't really have to do an awful lot. I think we did 3 gigs in a week. So the rest of the time, it was just a holiday, really. And it was cashless. So you had these lanyards around your neck that you paid for everything on. So it was very, very easy to just rack up the most ridiculous bill on cocktails. And in the casino, that was dangerous. You pay for that with your lanyard as well. So it was just a bit torturous, really.
The bill wasn't taken care of by
no, I don't.
No, Mr. Simmons or Mr. Stanley.
No.
Hence why they're millionaires, I imagine.
Yes. Yeah. It was
not paying people's cocktail bills.
Yeah.
Sounds like a good idea to me. Okay, let's move on. I'm going to ask you a question there. I know that you're a huge Bowie fan. What are your top 5 Bowie records, and why?
And why? Well, I'll probably, it might sound very lazy, but really just the first 5. No. So Man Who Sold the World really, really has a special place in my heart. It's very difficult to say if it's my favourite or not. It's like Beatles albums, I just can't. But it's probably had the most influence on me. I don't know if you can hear that. But it's just something about it really came along. It was one of the later ones that I even was aware of, actually. So to begin with, I've really been quite obsessed with Bowie since I was about, 13 or something like that. As soon as I kind of knew who he was, I was like, wow, this is great. This is me. And vocally has had an enormous influence, I'd say. And the first one was Hunky Dory. And so that always reminds me of that time. And the songs, it's a pretty much perfect album, isn't it? Man Who Sold the World is a little less sort of perfect in a clean. It's kind of like the production's a bit messy and a bit like some strange decisions here and there. But just for some reason, it came along sort of like, I guess I was only really aware of it. I don't know how I wasn't aware of it before, but when I was about 20, like when I was just starting Purson, and I think you can really hear that. Saviour Machine is pretty much what I based the whole of my band on.
Right.
And so, I'd say that's probably up the top. And then Hunky Dory, because like I say, it's just a beautiful, perfect album. Ziggy, obviously, and Aladdin Sane. All of those mostly because of the Mick Ronson influence, but also just the songs are incredible. Some of the best pop rock songwriting in the world that's ever happened. So it's very difficult. They're all sort of like, okay, so Hunky Dory to me stands alone as its own thing, because it's kind of prettier, I suppose, than the others, the later ones that have a bit of a harder edge, a bit more of a glam edge. But the sort of Ziggy and Aladdin Sane, they're almost like 2 sides of the same coin. You know what I mean?
I mean, you can listen to those 2 albums back to back, and it's almost like Aladdin Sane is kind of the continuing journey of that of Ziggy Stardust.
And God, that's got some of my favourites as well. Cracked Actor has got to be like in my top 5 Bowie songs.
Oh, absolutely.
And the 5th one, I don't really know, because I think from that point on, to be honest, for me it goes downhill a little bit for a while. But then I do really like Low. It's completely different, but I do really enjoy listening to that. It's like krautrock or something.
Low is a great album.
Yeah, it's brilliant. And I really like Black Star as well. The last one he did. Yeah. What are your favourites?
Apart from the first 5, like you said, which really are fantastic albums, I particularly love the Space Oddity album, which was technically obviously the second album.
That is excellent too. It's less of a piece of work though. It seems less sort of orchestrated as a piece of work.
It's it obviously captures more of the kind of late 60s psychedelia element than perhaps the early 70s glam stuff that everyone knows Bowie for, which is probably why I love it so much. For me, Diamond Dogs is one of my favourites, really, for the Orwellian storyscape.
Yeah. Oh, it is great.
It's, I mean, I can just listen to it all the way through.
Saying that it goes downhill from Aladdin Sane because it's still all brilliant.
Yeah, it's hard to judge, isn't it? With such an immense body of work, it's like there's a number of there's like a cluster of incredibly top of the crop brilliant albums all together at once, and then
when how prolific he was as well. I mean, I know that artists generally were more prolific back then because just they could focus entirely on just making music, I suppose, whereas now you have to wear several different hats and be your own booking agent, promoter, manager, all of this, social media, whatever.
So earn less money at the same time. Crazy.
Yeah, it's rubbish. But yeah, it is incredible just how prolific he was. I mean, so those first 5 albums that we're talking about? What are the years spanning that? I mean, it's like 71 to 74.
It will be around 71, 74, won't it?
Yeah, and just
God, it's such a tight cluster of time to get such an immense and lasting body of work out.
Makes me wonder what the hell I've been doing for the past couple of years.
Oh God, tell me about it. I think it's taken me 6 years to write my first literary novel. Yeah. Diamond Dogs. Yeah, I loved Diamond Dogs. Again, for the Orwellian storytelling, and some great songs. Next, I go to Scary Monsters.
Really?
I love Scary Monsters. It was released the year I was born. Which is really just a side note, but I'm a big fan of 80s new wave, and obviously that album hit in 1980, and it just seems so like most of Bowie's output ahead of the curve by a mile.
Yeah.
Well, when you consider the new wave explosion that was kind of directly afterwards. I've got a little Patti Russo story about this as well, because it was one of the first Bowie albums Patti, I think, ever bought herself. And I know she was really taken with that album. She was in high school at the time, probably last year of high school, I think. I can't remember off the top of my head. I'm sure she'll correct me in the comments below. But she sent me this piece that she'd done from art class that has survived until now, which is a painting reproduction of the cover. It was really fun to see kind of Patti at that age in high school and imagining her there as a teenager.
Later on as well. Did she get into painting later on, or is that just a thing?
No, I think that was just a hobby. That's something I'm going to have to ask her then. Yeah, maybe we should do a podcast and interview Patti.
What, all together?
All together. So where did I get to? Scary Monsters. I love Scary Monsters. I love everything about it. It's such a frenetic album in a way.
I'm going to have to get into it again then, really. It's probably one of the least that I've listened to. I do have a tendency, which is really bad, to just kind of reject anything that happened in the 80s.
Well, this was technically the cusp of, it's right on 1980, wasn't it? What am I talking about? I'm a child of the 80s, so obviously I love most 80s things.
Yeah, I'd probably have a bit more of a soft spot for it if I was, but I was 1990 baby.
There you go, childhood.
Yeah, childhood.
Other than that, I love the Labyrinth soundtrack.
Oh, me too. I don't know that.
That was mid-80s.
True.
I grew up with the film and the soundtrack.
Film, yeah, exactly.
Which is just fast. Did anyone ever look cooler than David Bowie in that film?
Oh, so sexy.
Don't answer that question. And like you said, Black Star is just an incredibly morose album, and I love it. It's like this liquid moroseness that you can just melt into.
Yeah, and considering what he was going through at the time, amazing that he managed to pull that out.
Like most Bowie lyrics. There are so many layers and levels of meaning buried within those songs. And you probably know this already, but Black Star is also a term for a certain type of cancer.
I didn't know that.
Again, maybe self-referential.
Oh, a lot of it definitely is, isn't it? So
5 records there. I'm not sure. If I didn't, someone will pull me up on it one day somewhere. You only did 4 and not 5. Cancelled.
Like the fossil is the stars, a memory of the bones of the animal. There's a mark upon my heart, a stubborn work of art of unexplained remains. And I doubt that they are bones, animal, bird, or botanical. Still a fossil they became, and so they will remain till my body lies deep in the ground. Too far down for you to find. Like the fossil is the stones, a memory of the bones of the animal. There's a mark upon my heart, a stubborn work of art of unexplained remains. Like the fossil is the stones, a memory of the bones of the animal. There's a mark upon my heart, a stubborn work of art of unexplained remains. Still a fossil it became. Soiled inside with soil outside is how I do intend to end my days.
And I'm specifically going to ask you, what authors or books inspired you?
well, in terms of now, my favourite is Angela Carter. Yeah, so I know you're big into horror, aren't you?
I think it's something that people tend to, I don't know, I feel like people tend to kind of put that label onto my writing, but I'm not really a horror writer at all.
I've actually never read anything by you, so I'm completely guessing here.
I don't worry, no one has. Ever since Steinman read a very early draft of my first book, South of Salem, and he surmised it in typical over-the-top Steinman style as Stephen King meets The Catcher in the Rye, and I was really happy that
That's great.
Jim had noticed. Exactly. I was like, wow, it's not a lot to live up to at all. And while I was really happy that Jim had noticed some of those influences creeping in, I can see how you could call my work Stephen King in so much as the non-supernatural side of Stephen King, more of small towns and strange places and the horrors that happen in everyday lives just around the corner. And The Catcher in the Rye, I'll just hold my hands up and say that Salinger was an enormous influence on me. And I always loved those kind of first-person insular prose styles. So that's where I come from. Anyway, we were talking about your literary influences.
Well, I mean, if you're talking, I don't write books or stories or anything like that. I write songs. So, but I mean, obviously, some of the things that I enjoy to read obviously have had some sort of influence on me there. So Angela Carter, I was saying anyway, I find her style of writing incredibly musical anyway, like the way that she uses language descriptively is like it's so decadent. Have you read any of her stuff? Just so rich, isn't it? It's like you feel like you're just eating dessert reading it. It's like,
I would call it mellifluous, I think.
Yeah.
A prose style.
Yeah. So I really, really love her, and the genre. I don't even really know. I know it's magical realism, right? You'll know more about these sorts of terms. So and I tend to like that kind of thing, the kind of surrealist. I don't know, almost sort of like fairy tales, dark fairy tales type thing. And yeah, she did the book of fairy tales as well. The what's it called? Bloody Chamber. Yeah. So I love her. And also talking about magical realists, I also really love Leonora Carrington. Who's a surrealist artist and writer. No one really else like her, to be honest. Very dreamlike, weird little short stories that she does. Do you know her stuff?
I don't. I'm not familiar with her at all.
I've got a few of her books that I just love the little stories. I can just the sort of thing I can just read over and over again. And I kind of just inhabit this dream world. It's you're gonna have to read it. It's great. So I tried to balance it out with like male writers as well. I tend to like female writers more, especially like the older I get. I don't know why that is, but so I tried to balance it out with some of my favourite male writers as well. I love Herman Hesse, so like Steppenwolf, Siddhartha, that kind of like spiritual quest kind of stories. And also Aldous Huxley, which is also kind of spiritual, I guess. Yeah, he's one of my favourites. And how many is that? 4?
Yeah, somewhere around there.
5.
I wasn't counting.
I guess I do read a lot of non-fiction too. So very interested in sort of like ancient civilizations, things like that. So Graham Hancock is a favourite. And yeah, kind of just like not conspiracy theory stuff, but I mean, I call it non-fiction.
I've no idea what you're talking about.
I'm sure there are some people that, I call it non-fiction, but there are probably some people that think it's a load of bollocks. Yeah, the kind of thing I'm interested in.
I know exactly the kind of thing you're interested in. I was just playing devil's advocate. Yeah, Huxley, Brave New World, becoming more relevant as time goes on, I feel.
Frightening, isn't it?
Frightening, isn't it? Same with 1984 by Orwell. Personally, I grew up with both of those writers, and Kafka as well, and Dostoevsky.
I love Kafka, yeah.
Well, Kafka's one of my favourites. We went over to Prague on a trip in 2018 and was fortunate enough to wander upon the street and the house where Kafka spent a summer writing. And they have the Kafka Museum in Prague. And it was just fascinating to absorb what his life was back then.
What was the house like?
Small and wooden. And it had oud floors.
Do you know what he wrote there?
Off the top of my head, I can't remember now. I did know, but that was 2018 and my mind isn't what it used to be. That'll happen when you hit 40 something.
Oh no, it's already happening. I'm blaming long COVID.
So am I. Blame everything on COVID. Yeah, so for me, from my side of the fence, Dostoevsky, Kafka, Orwell, Salinger, Kerouac, John Fante, who is an author that perhaps not many people have heard of. If you haven't heard of John Fante, and you like kind of stream of consciousness, but really tight.
Like Kerouac stuff.
Exactly. If you like really tight Kerouac, Salinger style prose, John Fante did it first.
That's
way back in the 20s or the 30s.
Cool, okay.
I can recommend a novel called Ask the Dust.
Ask the Dust. You'll have to email me that later because I will. Right on.
I will. I'm actually staring at my copy. It's actually down here in the study next to me. I'm just looking for the year. This is not his first novel, but it's early. 1939. And if you read the first chapter or so, the prose are incredibly contemporary. You would think it came from the Beat generation.
Interesting.
Other than Beat writers and modernists. And this is going back to the horror theme you mentioned earlier. Writers like H.P. Lovecraft made a huge impression on me.
I was going to mention him actually because I do.
Oh, really?
Yeah, I do love that. So yeah, At the Mountains of Madness is great, isn't it?
Oh, it's fantastic. I grew up with there are 3 volumes of there are 3 omnibuses.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it's the first omnibus that I like particularly. It has the short story The Outsider.
Yeah.
It starts off with The Outsider, and that was always one of my favourite pieces.
Yeah.
How does it begin again? The first line is great. And happy is he to whom the memories of childhood bring only fear and sadness. And I just think that sets up the atmosphere for that entire piece with its twist ending.
Oh, he's a master of atmosphere.
Bottle
So there we go. I've stalled us on Lovecraft.
Well, what shall we move on to now?
I think we're probably reaching into the realms of wrapping this up. I think.
Okay.
We've talked about the new album. We've talked about your career to date. We've talked about your childhood a little. We've talked about Bowie. We've talked about.
What about gear?
Oh, gear. Of course, we were going to talk about guitar gear and studio gear. Absolutely.
Yeah. We were talking about orange amps the other day, weren't we? So
we were, yeah.
we were very kindly given on. It's one of these permanent loan type deals that I'm hoping they forget about and never ask for them back.
The best kind of loans.
Yeah. But yeah, we actually used them for the first time live last night, and I was using the bass amp, which is it's a 500 watt thing that can fit in my handbag. It's crazy. You know, have you seen these tiny little heads?
500 watt.
Yeah, it's called a little bass thing, and
it's a solid state head.
It is, yeah, it is, but it's
Wow.
amazing. It's really great. And the Tremlord was what Ross was using, but that's what I'll be using on tour.
Right, and the Tremlord's the clean amp, right?
It is clean. It does break up, but yeah, you have to kind of. But I'll be using it mostly as a pedal platform. So I wanted a lot of clean headroom.
Considering the Tremlord is a clean amp-ish, it was clean for me because obviously I only ever played it in a guitar store.
Oh yeah, you have to really crank it.
Yeah, I think I didn't get past. I don't think I got it past 1 on the dial before they told me not to.
It's thing to have to do that in a guitar shop, isn't it? Like you're really imposing.
I'm really self-conscious of my playing as well because I have no natural rhythmic ability at all.
I've never played guitar worse in my life than when I'm in guitar shops.
It's amazing how many musicians say the same thing.
Yeah, it's just, suddenly I've completely forgotten how to do this thing I've been doing all my life.
It's amazing how amateurish it makes you feel. It does me, and I am amateurish, even though I've been playing since 1995. I still sound like I did in 1995. It's not a good thing. So you're going out with an orange Tremlord, which is a big, mostly high headroom clean amplifier.
Not big, it's a little combo.
Well, big in so much as sounding big.
It's loud, yes, very loud.
So what kind of dirt pedals are you taking for those big chuggy riffs, and what kind of pedals are you using for solos as well, and lead lines?
Well, the thing that I absolutely swear by that I've used since the early days of Purson is a 1978 MXR distortion, which is a really quite bog standard pedal. I mean, they are actually getting quite expensive now for the original vintage ones.
Oh, they sounded so good. The originals, the yellow box originals.
Yeah, the yellow ones, yeah. And it has to be a 78 as well. The 79 sound different. And it's just such a good sound. And I have never been able to find a distortion that sounds that sweet. It's just great. And then for fuzz, I use a tone bender clone. I'd love to have an original one, but they cost an absolute fortune. And to take on the road, it would just be a bit silly. And I often find with these vintage pedals, I've had a lot of vintage fuzz boxes and stuff, and you can't actually get them loud enough.
Really?
No, the volume drops quite significantly when you turn them on. Which is fine for recording because you can set it to whatever you want. But when you stomp it on live and it's supposed to be this big gnarly fuzz and it just drops in volume, you then have to put a boost on.
Right.
Which is kind of annoying.
And sometimes, obviously, boosts don't always play well with fuzz, and you have to be careful about where you put these things in the chain.
Yeah, exactly. And with my guitar as well, P90s, they're so aggressive. It can just howl horribly. So yeah, for fuzz live, I use this tone bender clone, and I've got a couple of other old fuzz copies clones. So I used to have a Shinny Companion. Do you know those?
No, I don't.
So they're a Japanese 60s brand. So I had the one that was called a Companion. There's another one as well that looks the same. But it's just the best fuzz. It's really, really cool. It's what Soft Machine Mike Ratledge used on his organ. And it sounds like that. Even on guitar, it's just got that sound straight away. It's really recognizable. But I've got a clone of one of those that I use live, which is by Frederick Effects. It's called an Unpleasant Companion.
Oh, fantastic.
Yeah, so that one's really cool. So yeah, I kind of use a mix of old stuff and new stuff, mostly the new stuff just because it's more reliable. And a Hudson Broadcast. Do you know that?
I know that one. I do. Yeah. I can picture the front of
So I use that as Really just a bit of sparkle. It's I don't actually use it for a distortion per se. It's, not really a distortion, kind of just like I don't really know, because it's supposed to be like a desk. That's like the idea of it. It's supposed to be like a broadcasting desk.
Right, of course.
And that's the idea. And the idea is that you can push it into the red by but I barely use it. It's like barely on, but it just gives it this kind of sparkle. I use it mostly on the 12 string, actually, the Dan Electro 12 string, because that's lower output pickups than my SG. So when I switch to that, it needs a bit of guts.
I've never actually used the broadcast myself, and I was just trying to think where it is that because I've seen it a lot, and I actually think it's on. You're probably aware of this. There's a YouTube show called That Pedal Show, and I'm pretty sure that they use the broadcast or have used it several times in the past.
Probably. It's really highly recommended. It's like very versatile. Just for all sorts of different gain stages, you can get massive fuzz out of it. But yeah, like I say, I just use it for like a bit of sparkle.
And what kind of modulation effects do you use?
I have a Strymon Deco and a Strymon Leslie. So the Deco is a tape machine.
I love the Deco.
It's really cool, isn't it? I use it mostly for like an ADT wobble, so like a very close double track type thing, but with the wobble sort of about halfway up. And that gives it a nice sort of like Magical Mystery Tour era kind of George sound.
Yeah, I can really hear that. I like the way that the gain on the pedal as well is again like kind of like pushing a desk or a tape machine into the red.
Isn't it? It's like so I do use that sometimes. I do use the saturation thing instead of a distortion, or instead of the broadcast. Basically, it's the similar sort of thing, but a much warmer kind of one, I guess.
I used to have the El Capistan by Strymon.
Oh, I'd love one of those.
Which was tape echo. It was fantastic.
Yeah, Ross used to have one. He sold it when we first met, and I was really angry with him.
Yeah, I sold mine as well. The regrets.
Always regret it. Don't know why I bother. And I have the Strymon Leslie as well.
Oh, fantastic.
Yeah, which is
I've never played the Leslie.
It's great. It's the best Leslie emulator I've heard, but obviously nothing beats the real thing. On recordings and everything, I put my guitar through an actual Leslie, but can't do that live.
I would love to have an original Echoplex.
Or just any, like, if you've seen the Binson ones with all the knobs.
Oh, I love the Binson Echo Rec. Yeah,
right.
Fantastic. I had a pedal by Catlin Bread from Oregon, and that emulated the Binson Echo Rec.
Other modulation, again, MXR phase. I've got a vintage phase 100.
You surprised me. I thought you were going to say a vintage 78 or 76 phase 90.
Oh, I did have one of those. I lost it, and I've replaced it with a modern one, and it's really not the same.
Yeah, nothing really replaces the, I think it's 76 phase 90. They did a reissue, MXR did a reissue that was using the all analog circuit, and it sounds really, really good, and the new ones sound nothing like it at all.
I know. I've got a phase 90, a phase 45, and an old phase 100. But nothing comes close to the original phase 90 I had. Yeah,
they're magical pedals, especially if, like me, you like to pretend you're Eddie Van Halen every now and again. Just really badly, so it's mostly just in your own mind.
It covers a lot of sins, doesn't it?
It really does. I'd love an Electric Mistress, one of the originals.
What's that?
It is like it's another phasey flangey. It's a flanger,
okay.
But it has this really organic kind of chorusy flange-like sound. It's not the aeroplane kind of 80s flange, but the 70s kind of modulation.
Tape flange. So a lot of the effects that we hear on recording aren't pedals. That is actually just tape phasing. Nothing actually emulates that. The Deco comes close. Do you have a Deco, or you've just used one?
I used to have one, like I used to have a lot of things.
Exactly, yeah, but it's so the Deco, when you hold down the right button, and it does that, I don't know what you call it, through phase or something, through zero, that
the kind of whooshy scrunchy sound.
Shorts, that's great. That's the thing that for me like comes closest to real tape phasing in a pedal.
Yeah.
I could go on forever with all this, by the way.
Oh, me too. Me too. Sorry, I was just reading my notes and thinking, how do I move us on from this pit of guitar gear we've fallen into? I love it. I could do this forever and a day. But I think most people have probably gone to the pub by now.
Yeah.
So I think it's probably time we wrap up.
Okay.
I've enjoyed this a lot. I'd love to do it again. It would be great to do a Bowie episode together where we talk about Bowie properly.
A whole hour of Bowie.
An hour of Bowie.
Yeah. We'll have to plan that, I think, rather than just ramble.
Oh, I think so too, definitely. I'm going to have to rely on written material, and not just my own leaking mind. Bowie, we could really do that. I think that would be fantastic.
Yeah, or a Beatles one.
That would also be great. Maybe just the psychedelic era.
Maybe. Yeah.
But then that kind of also crosses into Satanic Majesty's Request by the Stones as well for me.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe something psychedelic in general.
Yeah, just psychedelia, the topic.
We could do all the podcasts about all the things.
Yeah. I mean, actually, strictly Beatles, I think that's probably been done quite a lot.
Yeah, maybe more of the psychedelic era.
Yeah, let's do that.
That could be fun. Okay, well, this has been great. I've really enjoyed this, and it's been great catching up again. We got to talk about your new album, Two Piece Puzzle, which good people can buy from great places, especially your own website, and on tour right now. It's available on vinyl, multiple colours. It's available on CD and streaming as well. Yes,
it is. So it's through Esoteric Cherry Red label is the CD, and the vinyl is just strictly from my website.
Fantastic. I will link to all of these things below if you want to buy one, get one while they're still there. Your tour starts in 10 days from now. 8 days?
8 days. And we start in Newcastle, and we go all over the UK.
So I will try and get this out as soon as I can, so people are aware and can buy tickets. Again, I'll link to tour dates and tickets in the description box below. I think that's about it. I think we're done. I think we've talked about all the things that can be talked about.
Well, not quite.
or at least within a comfortable hour.
Yeah, a comfortable hour. Yeah, so, okay. Well, we can do this again sometime.
I would love to. So in the meantime, I'll say thank you for joining us. It's been a brilliant psychedelic roller coaster ride. I'll say happy Astara for Sunday.
Yes, that crept up quickly, hasn't it?
It did. It doesn't seem 2 minutes since the last.
No, well, it was the autumn equinox when we last saw each other, wasn't it?
It really was. My word, how these things just go by so quickly. That's time falling in on itself and collapsing. Well, on that morose note, we'll wrap this up. I'll say thank you, Rosie, for coming in and talking to us.
Thank you for having me, Nick.
And buy Rosie's albums and her T-shirts and see her on tour and all of that good stuff. Links below. Thanks for tuning in, and goodbye until the next time.
Bye, everybody.